Sweetheart, you don't need this wheelchair. You're just being dramatic. Children these days love the attention.
A cruel, heartless HOA president attacks a disabled 7-year-old girl right in the middle of a hospital lobby, mocking her wheelchair and calling her lazy. She has absolutely no idea that the child's father is watching everything unfold on the security cameras, and he is the chief of medicine who runs the entire hospital. Her perfect world is about to come crashing down around her. Before I tell you this incredible story, please comment below and let me know where you're watching from. Also, hit that like button and subscribe for more amazing true stories that need to be heard. The automatic glass doors of St. Catherine's Medical Center slid open with their familiar soft whoosh as Sarah Mitchell carefully pushed her daughter Emma's wheelchair through the entrance. Emma, a bright-eyed 7-year-old girl with beautiful curly brown hair, clutched her favorite stuffed rabbit tightly against her chest. Her small legs, weakened by a progressive disease called muscular dystrophy, dangled limply from the pediatric wheelchair that had become her constant companion over the past 2 difficult years. "Mommy, will Dr. Peterson make my legs feel better today?" Emma asked, her sweet voice carrying that innocent, hopeful tone that broke Sarah's heart just a little more each time she heard it. Sarah blinked back the tears that constantly threatened to fall these days and managed what she hoped was a convincing smile. "We'll see what he says, sweetheart. Remember, we're just here for your regular checkup today." The hospital lobby buzzed with its usual busy morning activity. Nurses moved purposefully between different departments, visitors clutched coffee cups like lifelines, and patients filled out endless paperwork at the reception desk. Sarah navigated through the crowded space carefully, making absolutely sure that Emma's wheelchair didn't accidentally bump into anyone or anything. They were heading toward the elevator bank when it happened. A sharp, perfectly manicured hand suddenly grabbed the wheelchair handle without warning, jerking it to an abrupt, violent stop. Emma lurched forward in her seat, nearly dropping her beloved stuffed rabbit. "Excuse me." A shrill, angry voice rang out across the lobby. "You cannot park this wheelchair here. This is designated as a walking zone." Sarah spun around quickly to find a woman in her late 50s, glaring at her with undisguised contempt and disgust. The woman wore an expensive designer pantsuit that probably cost more than Sarah's monthly rent. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, clearly the work of an expensive salon. She wore enough expensive jewelry to fund a small car payment. Her thin lips were pressed into a tight line of complete disapproval, and her cold blue eyes radiated pure entitlement. "I'm sorry, ma'am," Sarah said, genuinely confused by this confrontation. "We're not parking anywhere. We're literally walking toward the elevator right now. Don't give me that attitude." The woman snapped harshly, tightening her grip on Emma's wheelchair handle. "I'm Karen Berkshire, president of the Oakwood Hills Homeowners Association, and I know a violation when I see one. This wheelchair is blocking the natural flow of foot traffic in this lobby." Sarah felt her blood pressure immediately rise. "Ma'am, we are literally moving. We're in motion right now. Please let go of my daughter's wheelchair. You young mothers these days think you can do whatever you want." Karen continued, her voice growing even louder and more aggressive. "Always demanding special treatment for everything. In my day, we followed the rules without complaining. We didn't expect the whole world to bend over backward for us." Emma had gone very quiet in her wheelchair, her small hands now gripping the armrests tightly. Sarah could see tears beginning to form in her daughter's innocent eyes. "Ma'am, I'm asking you nicely one more time," Sarah said, her voice shaking slightly. "Please let go of my daughter's wheelchair right now. We have an important medical appointment." Karen's face flushed an angry red color. "How dare you speak to me that way? Do you have any idea who I am? My husband is on the hospital board of directors. I volunteer here regularly. I have more authority in this building than you could ever dream of having." Then Karen did something unforgivable. She yanked the wheelchair backward sharply, causing Emma to cry out in genuine pain as the sudden movement jarred her sensitive, weakened muscles. That was the moment when Sarah's maternal instinct kicked into complete overdrive. What happened next shocked everyone in that hospital lobby, and when Emma's father appeared, This cruel woman's world started falling apart. Stay with me, because this Christmas season reminds us that karma has perfect timing, and justice comes for those who hurt innocent children. Don't you dare touch my daughter's wheelchair again, Sarah shouted, her voice echoing loudly through the entire lobby. Several people stopped what they were doing to stare at the unfolding confrontation. You have absolutely no right to put your hands on her chair, or to speak to us this way. Karen's eyes widened in mock surprise and outrage. Oh, so now, you're making a scene. Typical behavior. You people always play the victim card when you're caught breaking the rules. Then Karen said something that would change everything. Your daughter isn't even that disabled, honestly. She's probably just lazy and looking for attention. I've seen kids like this before, milking sympathy from everyone around them, taking advantage of people's kindness. It's disgraceful. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow to the chest. Emma burst into tears, her small body shaking with heartbroken sobs. How dare you? Sarah whispered, her voice trembling with barely controlled rage. How dare you say that about my child? I'll say whatever I want, Karen shot back arrogantly. This is my hospital. My husband donates thousands of dollars every single year. You're probably here on Medicaid, taking advantage of hardworking taxpayers like my husband and me. Maybe, if you actually disciplined your daughter properly and made her work harder, she'd walk normally instead of demanding these special accommodations everywhere she goes. Sarah felt like she was drowning in a sea of fury and heartbreak. Her hands shook as she gently touched Emma's shoulder, trying desperately to comfort her sobbing daughter while simultaneously wanting to scream at this horrible, cruel woman who had just attacked the most precious person in her entire world. Mommy, why is she being so mean to me? Emma sobbed, her voice breaking. I can't help it that my legs don't work right. I try so hard every day. I know, baby, Sarah whispered, her own tears now falling freely down her cheeks. I know you do. Some people are just cruel and heartless, sweetheart. Karen crossed her arms triumphantly, looking satisfied with the pain she'd inflicted. If you don't like reality, maybe you should just leave. This hospital is for people who actually need medical care, not for attention-seeking children and their enabling mothers who can't accept the truth. That's enough. The voice was quiet but carried such natural authority that everyone within earshot immediately fell silent and turned to look. Sarah turned to see a tall man in a pristine white doctor's coat approaching them with purposeful strides. He was probably in his late 30s, with dark hair that was graying slightly at the temples and intense dark brown eyes that were currently blazing with barely controlled fury. Karen's entire expression changed immediately, her triumphant smile faltering. Dr. Mitchell, I was just trying to, I said. That's enough, Mrs. Berkshire. His voice was ice cold. He walked past Karen without giving her another glance, and knelt down directly in front of Emma's wheelchair. His entire demeanor softened instantly, transforming completely. Hey there, Emma Bear, he said gently. Are you okay, sweetheart? Emma's sobs quieted slightly as recognition dawned in her tear-filled eyes. Daddy? Sarah's eyes widened in shock as full recognition hit her. This was James Mitchell, Emma's father. But that wasn't all, not even close. This was also Dr. James Mitchell, the chief of medicine at St. Catherine's Medical Center. The man who literally ran this entire hospital and made all the important decisions. Karen Berkshire's face had gone from triumphant and smug to deathly pale in a matter of seconds. Dr. Mitchell, I didn't realize, I had no idea, Karen stammered, her previous confidence evaporating like water in the desert sun. James stood up slowly, his tall, imposing frame now towering over Karen. When he spoke, his voice was deadly calm and controlled. You didn't realize what, Mrs. Berkshire? That this was my daughter. That this precious little girl you just verbally attacked and physically grabbed without permission is my child. I was just trying to maintain proper order in the lobby, Karen stammered weakly, her earlier bravado completely gone. The wheelchair was blocking. She was moving toward the elevator. James interrupted, his voice dropping even lower and more dangerous. I watched the entire thing unfold from the security office upstairs. Would you like to know exactly what I saw on those cameras? Karen's mouth opened and closed repeatedly like a fish, desperately gasping for air out of water. I saw you grab a child's wheelchair without any permission whatsoever, James continued, his words precise and cutting like a surgeon's scalpel. I saw you berate a mother who was simply bringing her daughter to an important medical appointment. I heard you mock a 7-year-old girl's serious disability. I heard you suggest that my daughter's muscular dystrophy, progressive, incurable disease, is somehow the result of laziness or poor parenting on our part. Sarah watched in stunned silence as Karen seemed to shrink with each precisely delivered word. But the absolute worst part, James said, and now his voice shook with barely suppressed emotion, was watching you make my little girl cry. Watching you say cruel, heartless, unforgivable things to a child who battles every single day to do simple things that other kids take completely for granted. A child who has endured more physical pain in her 7 short years than you'll probably experience in your entire privileged, comfortable life. I'm so sorry, Karen whispered, her voice barely audible. I didn't know she was your daughter. You didn't know she was my daughter. James cut her off sharply. But that's not really the point here, is it, Mrs. Berkshire? If Emma had been any other child in a wheelchair, would your behavior have been acceptable? If Sarah had been any other mother, just trying to get her child to a doctor's appointment, would your words have been any less cruel? Karen had no answer. She just stood there, frozen. Let me make something very, very clear to you, James said, his voice now cold and completely professional. As chief of medicine at this hospital, I have the full authority to ban anyone from this facility who poses a threat to our patients' emotional or physical well-being. You, Mrs. Berkshire, just became exactly that threat. You can't ban me from this hospital, Karen protested weakly, some of her earlier fire attempting to return. My husband is on the board of directors. I'm a regular volunteer here. We've donated. Your husband is on the hospital's fundraising board, James corrected her sharply, which has absolutely no authority whatsoever over hospital operations or patient care decisions. I, however, am the chief of medicine. This hospital's medical decisions and policies flow directly through me. And right now, I'm making a medical decision that you pose a clear and present danger to our patients' well-being. He pulled out his phone and made a quick call. Security, this is Dr. Mitchell. I need an escort to the main lobby immediately. We have someone who needs to be removed from the premises and permanently added to our restricted access list. What happened next sent shockwaves through the entire hospital and the community. When Karen's lawyer tried to fight back, they had no idea what they were up against. This is why you should never mess with someone's child, especially during this season of compassion and justice. Karen's face turned red again, but this time with humiliation and embarrassment rather than anger. This is absolutely ridiculous. You're completely overreacting to a simple misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. Sarah finally spoke up again, her voice shaking with emotion. You grabbed my daughter's wheelchair without permission. You yelled at her for no reason. You called her lazy. You mocked her disability. You told me I was an enabling mother who probably uses Medicaid. None of that was a misunderstanding, Mrs. Berkshire. That was intentional, deliberate cruelty toward a child. I was just having a bad day. Karen defended herself weakly, grasping at straws. Everyone has bad days sometimes, and that gives you the right to take out your bad day on an innocent child? James asked quietly, his voice dangerous. Mrs. Berkshire, my daughter has muscular dystrophy. Do you even know what that means? Do you have any idea what she goes through? Karen remained silent, unable to meet his eyes. It means her muscles are gradually weakening every single day, James continued, and Sarah heard the raw pain in his voice. It means every day she loses a little more strength, a little more ability. It means she's had to give up running and jumping, and playing like other children her age. It means she's in significant pain most days. It means her mother and I live with the constant knowledge that this disease is progressive, and there's very little we can currently do to stop it from getting worse. Emma had stopped crying and was now listening quietly, her small hand reaching out to hold her father's larger one. "Emma is the bravest person I know," James said, squeezing his daughter's hand gently. "She faces every single day with a smile on her face. She doesn't complain about her pain. She works incredibly hard in her physical therapy sessions. She's kind to absolutely everyone she meets, even when they don't deserve it. And you, Mrs. Berkshire, just told this incredible little girl that she's lazy and seeking attention for sympathy." 2 security guards arrived at that moment, and James gave them quiet but firm instructions. "Mrs. Berkshire, we need to escort you out of the building," one of them said politely but very firmly. "This is an absolute outrage," Karen protested loudly. "Wait until my husband hears about this. Wait until the board of directors hears about this. I'll have your job, Dr. Mitchell." "The board already knows," James said with complete calm. "I copied them on an email about 5 minutes ago, complete with the security footage from multiple camera angles. They're currently reviewing your behavior very carefully and considering whether your husband's position on the fundraising board is still appropriate, given that his wife just created a major liability issue for this hospital." Karen's face went completely white. "You wouldn't dare." "I already did," James confirmed matter-of-factly. "You see, Mrs. Berkshire, this hospital's reputation is built entirely on compassionate, respectful care. We absolutely cannot have volunteers or board family members who treat disabled children and their parents with contempt and cruelty. It's bad for business, it's terrible for our reputation, and most importantly, it's morally wrong." As the security guards began to lead Karen away, she made one last desperate attempt. I'll sue this hospital for discrimination." "Discrimination?" James raised an eyebrow. "You're not being removed because of your race, religion, gender, age, or any other protected characteristic. You're being removed because of your behavior, your actions, and your words. You verbally assaulted a patient and her legal guardian. That's legitimate grounds for removal from any medical facility in this country. My legal team will be more than happy to explain that to your lawyer in great detail." Karen was escorted out, her protests gradually fading as she disappeared through the automatic doors. The lobby had fallen completely silent. Everyone present had witnessed the entire confrontation from beginning to end. Sarah stood frozen, her hands still trembling on Emma's wheelchair, trying desperately to process what had just happened. James turned to them, and suddenly he was no longer the formidable, intimidating chief of medicine. He was just a father, a concerned, loving father with worry etched across his features. "Emma, sweetheart, are you okay?" he asked gently, kneeling again to her eye level. Emma nodded slowly, wiping her eyes with the back of her small hand. "That lady was really, really mean, Daddy." "I know, baby," James said softly. "I'm so sorry you had to hear those terrible things. None of what she said was true. Not one single word. Do you understand that?" "I know," Emma said quietly. "Mommy always tells me I'm brave and strong." "You are brave," James assured her firmly. "You're the bravest person I know. The absolute bravest." He looked up at Sarah, and she saw a complex mix of emotions in his eyes: anger at what had happened, pain that his daughter had been hurt, and something else. Something deeper that made her heart skip a beat. "Sarah, I'm so incredibly sorry," he said quietly. "You and Emma shouldn't have had to deal with that horrible woman." Sarah felt completely overwhelmed by everything. She and James had divorced 3 years ago, not because they'd stopped loving each other, but because the overwhelming stress of Emma's diagnosis had driven a wedge between them that seemed impossible to bridge. They'd fought constantly about treatments, about money, about blame and guilt and fear and the uncertain future. Eventually, they'd mutually decided that separation was better for everyone involved, especially for Emma's emotional well-being, but they'd remained committed, dedicated co-parents. James paid for everything Emma needed without complaint. He took her to appointments whenever his demanding schedule allowed. He called every single night to say goodnight and "I love you." He'd never abandoned his daughter, even when their marriage fell completely apart. Standing here now in this hospital lobby, Watching him defend Emma so fiercely and completely, Sarah suddenly remembered exactly why she'd fallen in love with him in the first place. "You don't have to apologize, James," she managed to say, her voice thick with emotion. "You didn't do anything wrong. This wasn't your fault." "I should have been here earlier," James said with obvious guilt. "I should have." "James, stop," Sarah interrupted him gently but firmly. "You can't control other people's cruelty. But you were here when it truly mattered. You protected our daughter. That's what counts." Emma tugged on her father's white coat sleeve. "Daddy, am I really brave like you said?" James's eyes filled with tears, which he quickly blinked away before they could fall. "Emma, you are the bravest person I've ever met in my entire life. Do you know why I say that?" Emma shook her head, her curls bouncing. "Because being brave doesn't mean you're never scared or sad," James explained patiently. "It means you keep going even when things are incredibly hard. You do your physical therapy exercises even when they hurt. You smile even when you're feeling sad inside. You're kind to people even when they're mean to you. That's real, genuine bravery, sweetheart." Emma considered this carefully, the way children do. "Like a superhero, better than any superhero," James smiled through his emotion. "Because you're real, you're not pretending. You're my real-life hero." What happened over the next few days sent shockwaves through the entire community, and Emma's story reached people across the nation. But the most beautiful part was watching this family heal. Stay with me, because this Christmas season, this story reminds us that love and family can overcome anything. A hospital administrator approached nervously, wringing her hands. "Dr. Mitchell, I'm so terribly sorry about what happened here. We're immediately reviewing all our volunteer protocols," and James held up a hand to stop her. "We'll discuss all of that later, Patricia. Right now, my daughter has an important appointment with her doctor." He stood up and looked at Sarah with a question in his eyes. "May I come with you to the appointment, if that's okay with you?" Sarah nodded, surprised by how much she genuinely wanted him there beside them. "Of course you can come, James." James took gentle control of Emma's wheelchair, and they made their way together to the elevator. As they rode up to the pediatric neurology floor, Sarah watched him talk quietly to Emma, making her giggle with silly jokes and funny stories about his morning. This was the James she'd fallen in love with all those years ago. The gentle, caring, devoted man who put his family first, no matter what. The man who had endless patience with their daughter. The man who could make the worst situations feel somehow manageable. Dr. Peterson was a kind, grandfatherly neurologist who specialized in pediatric muscular disorders. His office was filled with colorful toys, cheerful decorations, and comfortable furniture, all designed to make young children feel safe and comfortable. "Well, hello there, Miss Emma." Dr. Peterson greeted them warmly when they entered. "And I see you've brought both your parents with you today. That's absolutely wonderful." Emma had calmed down considerably by now, though Sarah could still see faint traces of tears on her daughter's soft cheeks. Dr. Peterson noticed too, his experienced eyes missing nothing. "Rough morning?" he asked gently, his voice kind. "Someone was very mean to Emma in the lobby downstairs," James said quietly, his jaw tight. "But we handled the situation." Dr. Peterson's expression darkened briefly before returning to his professional, comforting smile. "I'm very sorry to hear that happened, Emma, but I'm glad your parents were there to help and protect you." The examination was thorough but gentle. As always, Dr. Peterson checked Emma's muscle strength carefully, tested her reflexes, and evaluated her range of motion. He asked detailed questions about her pain levels, her energy throughout the day, and her ability to perform daily tasks. Sarah watched anxiously, as she always did during these appointments. Each visit brought the terrible fear that the disease had progressed significantly, that they were losing more of Emma. "Well," Dr. Peterson said finally, reviewing his notes carefully, "Emma's condition is stable. There's been minimal progression since her last visit 3 months ago." Sarah felt relief wash over her like a wave. Stable was good. Stable was very good. Stable meant they had more precious time. However, Dr. Peterson continued, and both parents leaned forward attentively. I want to discuss some new treatment options that have recently become available. There's a clinical trial starting at Johns Hopkins that's showing very promising results for slowing disease progression in young patients with Emma's specific type of muscular dystrophy. James leaned forward intently, his doctor brain fully engaged. What kind of trial? What's the protocol? Dr. Peterson pulled up some documents on his computer screen. It's a combination therapy approach, new experimental medication, plus intensive, specialized physical therapy. The early results from the first group of patients are genuinely encouraging. Some patients have even regained minor functions they'd previously lost. What are the risks? Sarah asked immediately, her voice tight with worry and hope. All medications carry some risks. Dr. Peterson acknowledged honestly. This particular one can cause fatigue, nausea, and occasional headaches. But a team of specialists very carefully monitors the trial, and patients can withdraw at any time if the side effects become too severe or uncomfortable. He turned to Emma with a kind smile. Emma, sweetheart, this would mean traveling to Baltimore for appointments every month. Would that be okay with you? Emma looked thoughtfully at her parents, then back at the kind doctor. Will it make my legs work better? We hope so very much, Dr. Peterson said with complete honesty. We can't promise anything for certain, but we want to try our absolute best to help you feel stronger. Emma nodded with serious determination. I want to try it, then. Sarah and James exchanged meaningful glances across Emma's wheelchair. Can we have some time to discuss it privately and do some research? Sarah asked. Of course, Dr. Peterson said warmly. I'll send you all the detailed information, all the research papers, everything. Take all the time you need to make the right decision for your family. After the appointment concluded, James suggested they go to the hospital cafeteria for lunch together. It was a familiar place. They'd spent countless difficult hours there during Emma's initial diagnosis and treatment planning years ago. Emma chatted happily about the clinical trial, already imagining in her innocent way being able to play actively with other kids again, running and jumping like she vaguely remembered from before she got sick. Sarah and James let her talk excitedly, both lost in their own complex thoughts and emotions. Once Emma was settled comfortably with her lunch and absorbed in a tablet game with headphones, Sarah and James sat across from each other at the cafeteria table, the familiar awkwardness of divorced parents settling between them. That clinical trial could genuinely change everything for her, James said quietly, hope in his voice. It could also be false hope, Sarah countered, her voice weary from years of disappointment. We've been down this road before, James. Multiple times. New treatments, promising results that sound amazing, and then, nothing. No improvement. But what if it actually works this time? James pressed. What if we don't try it, and we miss our only real chance? What if we try it, and it fails spectacularly and Emma's heart breaks all over again? Sarah whispered harshly, her eyes filling with tears. She's only 7 years old, James. She's already been through so much pain and disappointment. Every time we tell her something might help, and then it doesn't work, I see a little more light fade from her eyes. I can't keep doing that to our daughter. James was quiet for a long, heavy moment. Is this really about Emma, or is this about us? About what happened to our marriage? Sarah looked up sharply, caught off guard. What? When Emma was first diagnosed, James said carefully, I pushed aggressively for every treatment option, every trial, every experimental therapy I could find. You wanted to be more cautious, more protective, to shield her from potential disappointment. We fought about it constantly, remember? It was one of the main things that drove us apart. Sarah felt fresh tears welling up. I was trying to protect our daughter from getting her hopes crushed over and over. I know, James said softly, reaching across the table. And I was trying desperately to save her, to fix her, to make this nightmare go away. We were both trying our absolute best, Sarah. We just had completely different ways of coping with the terror. And look where it got us, Sarah said bitterly. Divorced, living in separate houses, splitting our daughter's time between us like she's a possession. We're still her parents, James reminded her gently. We're still a team when it comes to Emma's care and well-being. That fundamental thing hasn't changed, even if everything else did. Sarah looked over at their daughter, who was giggling delightedly at something on her tablet, blissfully unaware of her parents' heavy conversation. I'm so tired, James, Sarah admitted, her voice breaking. I'm exhausted from fighting this disease every single day. I'm tired of watching our baby struggle with things that should be so simple. I'm tired of cruel people like that horrible woman today, who judge Emma without knowing anything about her life or her pain. I'm just tired of all of it. James reached across the table and took her hand in his. The gesture was so familiar, so comforting, that Sarah almost broke down completely right there in the busy cafeteria. I know you're tired, he said. I'm tired too, Sarah, but Emma isn't tired. Did you see her face when Dr. Peterson talked about the trial? She has hope. She still believes things can get better. Doesn't our brave daughter deserve to have us believe that alongside her? Sarah squeezed his hand tightly. When did you become so wise? Around the time a horrible woman made me realize how precious and fragile every single moment with Emma truly is, James said. I've been taking so much for granted, Sarah. I've been so focused on my work, on keeping this massive hospital running, on proving I can handle everything. But watching Emma cry today, because someone was cruel to her, seeing her hurt, it reminded me what actually matters in life. She's everything to us, Sarah whispered. She's everything, James agreed. And I think we should do the trial. Not because it's guaranteed to work, or because it's a miracle cure, but because Emma wants to try. Because our brave little girl deserves every possible chance we can give her. Sarah nodded slowly. Okay, we'll do it. Together, James echoed with meaning. Over the next few days, Karen Berkshire's world completely fell apart, and Emma's story reached millions of people. What happened next proved that sometimes the worst moments lead to the most beautiful changes. This Christmas, this reminds us that hope and healing are always possible. Over the next few days, the incident with Karen Berkshire had far-reaching devastating consequences for her. The hospital's security footage had captured the entire confrontation in crystal-clear detail from multiple angles. The board of directors reviewed it and was absolutely horrified by what they saw. Karen's husband, Richard Berkshire, was asked to resign immediately from the fundraising board. He complied without argument, apologizing profusely and repeatedly for his wife's inexcusable behavior. Karen herself received a formal, permanent ban from St. Catherine's Medical Center. But that wasn't all. She was also asked to step down as president of the Oakwood Hills HOA, after multiple residents came forward with complaints about her past behavior toward them and their families. Apparently, Emma wasn't the first person Karen had targeted with her cruel tongue and abuse of power. Stories began to emerge from the shadows. A single mother, Karen, had been fined repeatedly for trivial made-up violations. An elderly veteran, Karen, had been openly mocked for using a walker. A family Karen had tried to force out of the neighborhood because their autistic sons. Stimming behaviors lowered property values. The community that had once feared Karen Berkshire and stayed silent now turned against her with a vengeance. People who had suffered her abuse in terrified silence finally found their voices. Letters were written to the HOA board. Formal complaints were filed. The HOA board held an emergency meeting and voted unanimously to remove Karen from her position of power immediately. James received a formal legal letter from Karen's expensive lawyer, threatening a lawsuit for defamation and discrimination. His legal team responded with their own letter outlining in excruciating detail every law Karen had broken during her interaction with Emma, including verbal assault of a minor, unauthorized physical contact with a disabled child's mobility device, and disturbing the peace of a medical facility. The lawyer never contacted them again. But the most significant consequence came from an unexpected source. A woman named Margaret Chen reached out to James, through the hospital's website contact form. She was a journalist for a respected national disability rights magazine. She'd heard about the incident through a friend who worked at the hospital, and she wanted to write a comprehensive story about it. James was very hesitant at first. He didn't want Emma to become some poster child or to exploit what had happened to her for publicity or personal gain. But Margaret assured him that the story would focus on the much broader issue of ableism and the systematic abuse that disabled children and their families face in public spaces every single day. She promised to handle Emma's story with sensitivity and grace. After discussing it thoroughly with Sarah, they agreed. If Emma's painful story could help other families going through similar struggles, some genuine good could come from that terrible morning. The article was published 3 weeks later, and Margaret Chen proved to be a beautiful, talented writer. She handled Emma's story with incredible sensitivity and grace. She interviewed both James and Sarah extensively. She spoke with Dr. Peterson about the many challenges families with disabled children face in healthcare and society. She even included powerful statements from other parents who had experienced similar incidents of discrimination and cruelty. But the most powerful, moving part of the article was Emma's own words, spoken in her own voice. Margaret had asked Emma what she wanted people to know about using a wheelchair and living with her disease. Emma had thought about it very seriously before responding in her thoughtful way. "I want people to know that I'm still me," Emma had said. "My legs don't work very well, but my brain works just fine. My heart works perfectly. I'm not sad all the time, as people think. I'm not looking for people to feel sorry for me. I want to be treated like a regular kid who happens to use a wheelchair." When asked what she would say to people like Karen Berkshire, Emma had been quiet for a long moment before answering with wisdom beyond her years. "I would say that being mean doesn't make you strong," she said. "My daddy says that real strength is being kind when it's hard to be kind. I think that lady was probably sad about something in her own life, and she took it out on my mommy and me. That's not okay at all, but I forgive her anyway. I hope she learns to be nicer to people." Sarah had cried when she read that part of the article. Her 7-year-old daughter had more grace and wisdom than most adults she knew. The article went absolutely viral. It was shared thousands upon thousands of times across all social media platforms. Other families came forward with their own heartbreaking stories of discrimination and ableism. Disability rights organizations picked it up and spread it further. Major news outlets requested interviews. Through it all, James and Sarah carefully tried to shield Emma from the overwhelming spotlight, while still allowing their daughter's important voice to be heard. They carefully selected which interviews to do, always prioritizing Emma's comfort and emotional well-being above everything else. Emma became a small but powerful advocate for disability awareness, speaking at her school about what it was really like to use a wheelchair. Her classmates, who had always been kind to her, became even more protective and inclusive. 6 weeks after the incident, Emma started the clinical trial at Johns Hopkins. Every month, James and Sarah drove her to Baltimore together for treatments and careful monitoring. The first few weeks were genuinely hard. Emma experienced significant nausea and debilitating fatigue. There were difficult days when she felt worse instead of better. Sarah and James took turns staying with her, supporting her through the difficult side effects, holding her when she cried, and encouraging her when she wanted to quit. But then, slowly but surely, things began to change in amazing ways. After 2 months, Emma reported that her physical therapy exercises were getting noticeably easier. After 3 months, she could lift her arms higher than she had been able to in over a year. After 4 incredible months, she stood up from her wheelchair completely on her own, for the first time in 18 long months. The improvement wasn't dramatic or miraculous, like in the movies. Emma didn't suddenly start running marathons or jumping rope, but the relentless progression of her disease had stopped completely. For the first time since her devastating diagnosis, Emma was actually getting stronger instead of weaker. Dr. Peterson called it remarkable and unprecedented. James called it a genuine miracle. Sarah just called it hope, beautiful, precious hope. 8 months after that terrible incident with Karen Berkshire, something beautiful happened that brought this family full circle. What happened next will touch your heart this Christmas season, because it proves that love conquers all. 8 months after the incident with Karen Berkshire, Sarah was helping Emma with her homework at their kitchen table when the doorbell rang unexpectedly. She opened it to find James standing there with multiple takeout bags from Emma's absolute favorite restaurant. "I thought maybe we could have dinner together tonight," he said with a hopeful smile. "If that's okay with you." It had gradually become a comfortable routine over the past months. The regular drives to Baltimore for Emma's treatments had forced James and Sarah to spend significant time together. At first, it had been awkward and uncomfortable, but gradually, they'd fallen back into an easy, natural rhythm. They talked about Emma's progress, of course, but also about other things, their jobs, their lives, their regrets, and hopes, and dreams for the future. They'd started having family dinners once a week, then twice a week. Now, James was showing up at their door with food several times a week, and Sarah had stopped questioning it or analyzing what it meant. "Daddy," Emma squealed with pure delight when she saw her father. "Can we eat in the living room and watch a movie together?" "May we eat in the living room?" Sarah corrected automatically, her teacher instincts kicking in. "May we eat in the living room and watch a movie?" Emma repeated with an impish grin. Sarah and James exchanged meaningful glances, a whole conversation happening in that look. "Just this once," Sarah conceded with a smile. They set up a picnic-style meal on the living room floor, something that would have been physically impossible for Emma 8 months ago. Now she could sit on the floor with pillows supporting her, her legs crossed beneath her in a way that would have been unthinkable before the trial. As they ate and watched Emma's favorite animated movie, Sarah found herself naturally leaning against James's shoulder. It felt right. It felt like coming home. After Emma fell asleep, her head resting peacefully in Sarah's lap, James carefully picked her up and carried her to her bedroom. Sarah watched him tuck their daughter in with such tenderness, kissing her forehead gently and whispering good night. When he came back to the living room, Sarah was still sitting on the floor, surrounded by the remnants of their dinner. "I should probably go," James said quietly, but he didn't move toward the door. "Or you could stay," Sarah heard herself say. James looked at her carefully, hope and fear mixing in his expression. "Sarah, I'm not saying we should just get back together like nothing happened," Sarah clarified quickly. "I'm just saying I miss this. I miss us being a real family. I miss you." "I miss you too," James admitted, sitting down next to her on the floor. "Every single day." "We broke up because we couldn't handle the stress," Sarah said, "because we were both drowning in fear and grief, and we dragged each other down instead of holding each other up. And now?" James asked quietly. "Now I think we're both stronger," Sarah said thoughtfully. "Separately, we've each learned how to cope with Emma's illness. We've each found our footing. Maybe together now, we could be even stronger than we were apart." "I don't want to hurt you again," James said, his voice breaking slightly. "I don't want us to fall back into those same destructive patterns." "Then we won't," Sarah said. "We'll do better this time. We'll communicate better. We'll go to counseling if we need to. We'll fight fair when we disagree. We'll remember that we're on the same team, always." James took her hand in his. "I never stopped loving you, Sarah, even when we were at our absolute worst. Even when we were screaming at each other, I never stopped loving you. I never stopped loving you either," Sarah admitted, tears flowing freely now. "I was just so scared. Scared of losing Emma. Scared of losing you. Scared of losing myself and all the pain." "What about now?" James asked, hope clear in his voice. Sarah thought about the past 8 months, the trial. Emma's improvements, the way she and James had slowly rebuilt their relationship through shared goals and honest communication. "Now, I'm still scared," she said honestly. "But I'm also hopeful, and I think that makes all the difference in the world." James pulled her close, and Sarah let herself relax completely into his embrace. It felt like coming home after a long, difficult journey. 1 year after the incident with Karen Berkshire, St. Catherine's Medical Center held its annual fundraising gala. This year, The event was specifically dedicated to raising money for pediatric neurology research. The guest of honor was Emma Mitchell. Sarah stood backstage, adjusting Emma's beautiful dress for the 100th time. Emma looked absolutely stunning in a lavender gown, her curly hair styled with tiny, delicate flowers woven throughout. She still used her wheelchair for longer distances, but now she could stand for short periods, and even take several steps with minimal assistance. "Mommy, I'm really nervous," Emma whispered, her hands trembling slightly. "You don't have to do this if you don't want to, sweetheart," Sarah assured her gently. "Daddy and I won't be disappointed at all." "No, I want to," Emma said with determination. "I want to tell people about my story, so it can help other kids like me." James came backstage looking handsome in his tuxedo. He'd moved back home 3 months ago, and they were officially a reunited family. They'd done it slowly and carefully with the help of an excellent family therapist, but it was working beautifully. "Ready, Emma Bear?" he asked, with an encouraging smile. Emma nodded bravely. James pushed her wheelchair to the side of the stage, while Sarah found her seat in the audience. The room was filled with hospital staff, generous donors, board members, and patients' families. When it was time, James walked confidently onto the stage. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming tonight," he began. "I'm Dr. James Mitchell, Chief of Medicine here at St. Catherine's, but tonight I'm here primarily as a father." He paused, looking out at the crowd with emotion clear in his voice. "A year ago, my daughter experienced discrimination right here in this hospital. A woman grabbed her wheelchair, mocked her disability, and said cruel things that no child should ever have to hear. It was honestly one of the worst moments of my entire life. Not because of what happened to me, but because I had to watch my precious little girl cry." Sarah saw people in the audience nodding sympathetically, some wiping their own eyes. But out of that terrible, painful moment came something truly beautiful. James continued. "It reminded me what actually matters in life. It brought my family back together. It sparked an important national conversation about ableism and discrimination. And it motivated my daughter to use her voice to help others." He turned toward the wings. "Emma, would you like to come out here?" Emma wheeled herself onto the stage, to thunderous, heartfelt applause. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face as she watched their brave daughter approach the microphone James had lowered for her. "Hi, everyone," Emma said, her voice clear and surprisingly strong. "My name is Emma Mitchell, and I have muscular dystrophy. That means my muscles don't work as well as other kids' muscles do." She paused, looking out at the audience with newfound confidence. "A year ago, a mean lady told me I was lazy. She said I was trying to get attention and sympathy. She made me cry really hard." Emma's voice got stronger. "But you know what? She was completely wrong about me. I'm not lazy at all. I work really, really hard every single day. I do my exercises even when they hurt a lot. I try my absolute best in school. I'm kind to people even when they're not kind to me. And I'm here tonight to tell everyone that kids like me deserve respect." The audience applauded enthusiastically, even more loudly this time. "I want people to know that being different is okay," Emma continued with passion. "Using a wheelchair doesn't make me less important than other kids. Having a disability doesn't mean I'm less valuable. I'm still Emma. I still love drawing pictures and animals, and chocolate ice cream. I still have dreams, and feelings and thoughts. I'm just Emma, and that's enough." Sarah was sobbing openly now, overwhelmed with pride for her incredible daughter. "So tonight, I want to thank everyone who's helping kids like me," Emma said. "Thank you to all the doctors and nurses who take such good care of us. Thank you to all the people who donate money for important research. Thank you to my mummy and daddy for always believing in me and never giving up. And thank you to everyone here tonight for listening to my story." Emma paused, then added with a small, forgiving smile, "And to that mean lady, from a year ago, I forgive you. I really hope you learn to be nicer to people, especially kids." The entire audience gave Emma a standing ovation that seemed to go on forever. Sarah rushed to the stage, unable to stay seated any longer. James met her there, and together they embraced their daughter, while the applause continued to wash over them. As the applause gradually faded, Sarah looked at her family, her brave, incredible daughter, her devoted husband, the beautiful life they'd built together through pain and perseverance and unwavering love. A year ago, a cruel woman had tried to break them, to hurt them, to make them feel small. Instead, she'd inadvertently helped them become stronger than they'd ever been before. 2 years later, Emma walked across her elementary school stage to receive a special award for disability advocacy and kindness. She still used her wheelchair most of the time for longer distances, but the clinical trial had given her back abilities that no one had thought possible. Karen Berkshire never publicly apologized for her actions, but Sarah heard through the neighborhood grapevine that the woman had moved to another state, far away. The HOA she had terrorized for years had elected a new kind presidenta, compassionate woman who focused on genuine community building, rather than rigid rule enforcement and power trips. James and Sarah renewed their wedding vows in a small, intimate ceremony with close family and friends. Emma was the flower girl, wheeling down the aisle with a basket of flower petals balanced perfectly in her lap, her face glowing with pure happiness. The article about Emma's experience continued to make a real difference in the world. It was used in medical schools across the country to teach future doctors about treating disabled patients with true dignity and respect. It was shared extensively in disability rights circles. It inspired countless other children and families to speak up about their own experiences with discrimination. But for the Mitchell family, the greatest victory was being together, whole again. They'd survived the absolute worst and come out stronger on the other side. They'd learned that love isn't about perfect circumstances or an easy life. It's about choosing each other every single day, even when things are impossibly hard. Emma grew up to be exactly who she'd always been: brave, kind, resilient, and wise beyond her years. An incredible young woman who changed the world simply by being authentically herself and refusing to let anyone make her feel small. And it all started with a terrible moment in a hospital lobby. A cruel woman's unprovoked attack, and a father's fierce, protective love for his daughter. This Christmas season, as we gather with our families and reflect on what matters most, Emma's story reminds us of several powerful truths. Family is always worth fighting for, no matter how broken it seems. Disabilities don't define a person's worth or value. Cruelty says far more about the person giving it than the person receiving it. And even in our darkest, most painful times, there is always hope waiting to be discovered. Emma Mitchell taught the world that lesson, one brave word at a time. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe to the channel for more incredible true stories about hope, healing, and the amazing resilience of the human spirit. Remember, never let anyone silence your voice or dim your light. You have every right to exist fully, loudly, and authentically in this world. Merry Christmas to all of you, and may your homes be filled with the beautiful sounds of love, laughter, and acceptance.